you. A special welcome to Jodie Evans. Tarek's right, Jodie, we've been wanting to have you come and talk with us for months now. So it's a pleasure to see you and have you at the chapter meeting. I know you have this extensive bio. It's
Please
difficult
don't
to do
introduce
all
me.
of it.
Everybody got the email, so I'd love to just start. I'm the co-founder of CodePink. That's all you need to know.
You got it, Jodie. It's yours. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. It's like, no, don't do that again.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I'm just really honored to be with you, and I want to start with expressing my gratitude for who each of you is and what you do with your life. And I just feel privileged to be here and invited to share. And I'm I want to start by giving you a little bit of history before I bring us into the moment, and the whole McCarthyism, so you can have a better understanding of the arc. Since that is how we do our work, is we understand the deeper histories. We don't start in a moment. And that's who we are as anti-war activists, peace activists, and those who work for justice, and definitely being rooted in the values of the indigenous, that look back and forth in 7 generations. So, I started out as a peace activist in the 60s. My friends' brothers were coming home in body bags, and I worked to get 18-year-olds the right to vote because I couldn't believe that they were, 18, 19, 20 years old, that they were dying and didn't even have the right to vote. And so my roots are rooted in this, and I definitely spent about a decade working on as an anti-nuke activist, stopped the nuclear dumping site and near my house for a couple of years, worked on that. I've run a presidential campaign. So, but I have always loved, I got to go to Iraq, Iran, and Lebanon back in the 70s. So I had a place in my heart for the Middle East, of this beautiful place that I visited that welcomed me and that was so rich in culture and kindness. And so when I heard that Bush was, wanted to go to war on Iraq, um, and I'd already been protesting in 91 during the first Gulf War and all those like yellow ribbons around trees. And so I just got on a plane and I flew myself to DC and pulled everybody that I could into a girlfriend's house, including Caroline Casey, who had already called Code Hot Pink for the Earth. And I'd already put on a retreat a few months earlier for unreasonable women, and we were going to work on, climate issues. And seeing the lies and the hate that was driving us to war, we called Code Pink in response to Bush's frightening the American people with the orange, red, and yellow codes. And, I was just like, okay, Medea, we've got to be outside the White House every day. It's got to be continuous. People got to trust it. They've got to join us, and they've got to do it at home. And, that's our work. And we've got to disrupt power and be creative and audacious and disarming. And pink is a disarming color because it's the color of a heart and love and Valentine's Day. It's a very powerful, especially our fuchsia pink, and disarming. And so, we didn't do that. We went to Iraq. We, cried the day the war started and said, okay, we're going to stop the next war now. We wrote a book called that. And, then it was Iran and Palestine and Gitmo and drones and Syria and Western Sahara and the Congo and Haiti and Cuba and Yemen and Pakistan and Lebanon and Libya and no to NATO and Venezuela and more drones and weapons manufacturers and war is not green and the other 99% needs and not the needs of war, and disrupting imperialist power in all its forms and creating citizen diplomacy wherever we were focusing. And, that was decades, and always disrupting power as disarmingly as possible. And trying to, as we say, throw, rocks in the mechanism of the wars moving forward. During Obama, I had a epiphany. I was just like, wait, we're not going to end war till we end the war economy. It serves the war economy. It's not like war, it's the war economy. Because, and I think this happened for me after 2008. It was just like, oh, war is just in service to the war economy. We have to stop the war economy. And then when Trump won, it created Divest from Weapons to take our work back locally so that we could stay out of Washington during the shit show. And so those helped us build back our local chapters that had died. You know, the whole, everybody lived through the peace movement during Obama that was literally, I would say, suffocated during his 8 years, and building it back. And, you know, we kept it going with our, you know, with a lot of our work, but the public wasn't really feeling it. And so working on local peace economy and how we divest ourselves from war, because here we are peace activists, but we're invested in the war economy culture. And how do we like change our habits and our, the addictions that are forced on us by the war economy into practicing the peace economy. And then also, you know, having our work happen locally. 5 years ago, I was traveling to China to see my husband, who had decided to move there because Bolsonaro had canceled the contracts that Lula had with the 1.5 million peasant farmers there. And so they had no place to sell their produce. The contract had been with the Brazilian government to feed the school children of Brazil with their organic produce. And so he went to try to see if he could make a market in China for this organic produce of these peasant farmers, because China cares about peasant farmers. And so every month I would post the pictures of my adventures on Facebook, and people would like be super positive. They'd want to come. They were curious and basically experiencing the wonder that I was experiencing, exploring and discovering China. Then in 2020, it all shifted. And all of a sudden, China had become our enemy. And how dare I post about China? And don't I know it's horrible? And then I started to notice the propaganda, went, oh my God, this is Iraq all over again. Here we are. Here's the propaganda. You can watch it across every mainstream media, same story, same person, no real pictures or any truth. It's just somebody paid for by the US State Department telling us another lie. I started China's Not Our Enemy as a campaign at CODEPINK, the same time the fabulous Mike Wong of Vets for Peace was creating Pivot to Peace, and we've been partners ever since. And I just want to say I value this human enormously. You have a great person in Mike, but we've been working together for 20 years. So it's just fun to be working more closely. So in the beginning days, we tried to expose the lies and the propaganda that I now call the weeds, that were planted to ensnare us, just as they are with Palestine. I call them weeds, like the Hamas weed, you know, like all these weeds that they try to grab you in and not let you point out the horrible things that are actually happening, or the fact that, oh, yes, I'd like to listen to that, but that's not a reason to go to war. And none of these things that you're bringing up are a reason to go to war, because all of them would make me worse if we went to war. So Congress created a hate on China committee, and we disrupted its very first meeting, which was prime time. The first time in all my 22 years of CODEPINK, there has been a prime time hearing of a new committee. And a few weeks later, I get a letter from the New York Times asking questions that were definitely written by the CIA and the State Department. They're not written by journalists, all blaming and leading and accusatory. And at first I just ignored them. I was like, oh, this is the New York Times that took us to war in Iraq and killed almost 6 million people and cost us $20 trillion. I don't give a shit what the New York Times want. They're, you know, dirt to me. But then I showed a friend the letters, like maybe 2 months into this, and she goes, Jodie, I said, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I answer these questions? Are ridiculous. And she said, Jodie, like all your friends that are in jail didn't do anything wrong either. And I went, oh, so I wrote the letter. I did make a statement saying, you know, all these questions you have asked me have no relevance in truth. Of course, I have no relationship to the Communist Party of China. And I left it at that. And then the horrible, you know, full of lies and distortions article came out in the New York Times. They had 11 reporters working on it. They couldn't prove anything. It's, a total mess. And the main guy who was writing it in the beginning actually moved himself to the back. They put a report in the same way of the rape article on on Gaza, it came up. They find another reporter, nothing to do with anything, put them in to carry the bad news that is not true. So I want to say that when that article ran, the most amazing thing was that day was better than my birthday. I got so much love from around the world of support and care and love and celebration. Like, oh my God, Jodie, you must be doing something right. The New York Times has decided to attack you. Like when we were growing up, that, you were told by your teachers, the person to follow is the person that the New York Times is attacking. So that was a surprise. And then we created the new McCarthyism campaign that weekend on Sunday, and just watching everybody jump in, real journalists writing, shameful, articles about the shame of this and what does this mean about the time we live in. And so I think that was the best we could do to confront it. I wrote an op-ed that I can put in the chat about, that I wrote back to the New York Times. I said, if you get to lie about me, at least you can put my op-ed in, to which of course they didn't. But, and then I think in this link, well, actually I can send you another link of all the articles written, all the support that was sent, of okay, here, they think they can just lie. That article about me in the New York Times feels so tame and so meaningless compared to what's happening with the New York Times right now and Gaza, and what it's like to be in the halls of Congress right now. So, Medea's been in the halls of Congress since October 7th. And I've been every month for a week. I've been in those halls for 50 years. And, certainly CODEPINK, we started in those halls. I've never seen anything more frightening. And certainly in mainstream media, more 1984, where it is just full of lies. Nobody's apologizing. Nobody's pretending. I mean, that you've got journalists being murdered and no journalists are even calling it out. I mean, it's a whole level of even how we're being dealt with as a McCarthyism, on steroids. That article feels like nothing compared to what we're witnessing, that you can't even speak the truth about a genocide without being attacked with, what I call the weeds, the things they try to grab you in that have no meaning and are distractions to the murderous, monstrous, villainous acts that are taking place in our names, with our money, and with our weapons. So, I mean, it's a horrible time to be alive. And also just want to, at the same time, talk about what has happened with Ukraine to now also, even watching what happened around the fog of war with Ukraine, where all of a sudden people who were peace activists would show up and say, oh, we've got to send weapons. And I'm just like, when did you change from being a peace activist? Oh, but this is peace. I'm like, weapons will kill the Ukrainians. That's war happening on Ukraine is going to kill Ukrainians. When did that be okay? But the propaganda, it was so fast. It's interesting, with Ukraine, that propaganda wasn't as fast as with Palestine, because you'd had that whole lie of the, what was it, the Russiagate? You had the whole Hillary Russiagate that had kind of laid ground to hate on Russia, to hate on Putin, see them as the monster, and not have any context of the history of the coup the United States had done, or that there was a peace accord that we crossed the red line on. So, but what happened was when the US sanctioned Russia, you have the rest of the world leadership looking, if they can sanction Russia, we're all in big trouble. And they pulled back and started to talk to each other about what are we going to do. And so in the last 2 years, we've watched from a hegemony that existed, that, you know, still is the most powerful thing on the planet, with control of 75% of the weapons, the biggest nuclear arsenal, and ready to use it in any moment. It's not that the empire is any less dangerous. I would say in some senses more dangerous, because it's more senses the existential threat of its demise. But what you're watching is a reorganization of the world. And I, you know, to go with the prayer at the beginning of, you know, the fact that this is also a week when some bases got closed down, and a big one in Niger, you know, that we've got countries in Africa that are saying, oh my God, democracy is a lie. It was just a tool to control us. We're going to go back to taking control of our countries. And 3, you know, African countries have thrown out the United States. You've now got a whole base that's been closed. I think it's the biggest drone base on the planet right now. So we're also at the same time as watching the 1984 McCarthyism take over the brains of liberals, which my favorite song these days, if anybody as old as me can remember, Phil Oakes, Love Me a Liberal. It's a good one to remember to listen to, because especially on the McCarthyism thing, it's like at the very end of it, it's like, and so I'm going to turn you in. It's horrible, and also something's happening that is amazing. The 7 billion Black and brown people in the world get that the empire is not the shining castle on the hill. It has no morals. It's a definite monster. It is violent and horrific. And they're unconnecting themselves as fast as they can. Does not mean that the empire is not doing as fast as it can the most dastardly things across the planet. And yet the emperor has no clothes. The curtains have been pulled back. And we're watching, you know, I look back to the Occupy movement, where I was so happy. Oh, these young people, they're not caught up in the empire because it's hurt them. It's like left them, you know, carrying a debt. And so now it doesn't own them. And now we have a whole nother generation that looking through the values that they've been raised on and seeing the monster that is their country, that is the empire. And we're, you know, in the streets with a whole new, I mean, at CODEPINK, it's like we were always like, when are we going to get young people in the streets? And right now I'm in the streets with young people all day, every day. So it's a fascinating time, and power tools are being used in a way with the gloves off, right? They're not even pretending. It is just gloves off. We're going to use all our tools. We're going to kick you out of rooms. We're going to lie about you. We're going to get you out of the way, you know, whatever is necessary to crush you, because to the empire, the existential threat is China, because China is an alternative that they can't have exist, which they've known since, you know, the end of the World War II. You know, dropping a bomb on Japan was because we can't let this exist. So there we have their existential threat and our desire for peace, and a world that is in harmony and cooperation and nurtures all of life, so that the planet can continue to hold us humans. The local peace economy work, just to go back to that beautiful video that you showed, is rooted in indigenous cultures. It is really a tool to get us back to our roots of where we taught each other how life could continue, where life was the core of the culture, where we did share life, we did care for each other, where life was at the core, not the violence of the war economy and war. And then I think that working locally, as you know, New York Vets for Peace is really where our strength is, that building and teaching and growing and being in the streets and inspiring and not letting go, keeping, as we say, keep putting pebbles in their boots so they eventually get so blistered they can't walk. That, you know, we know, as having been at this for a long time, you have to keep throwing the pebbles in because they seem to be able to figure out how to heal overnight and have a lot of resources. I'll never forget sleeping with Cindy Sheehan at our first days of Camp Casey and watching them every morning. We would wake up to the new attack. And it was like, I was thinking, they have to spend millions of dollars every night just to figure out the next thing, the amount of research, the amount of people they had to get. You know, I was like, these people don't sleep. And we know that we can't sleep because they're, you know, diabolical and evil on steroids. And there's a lot of them. There are now 8 million people with national security clearance. And we've watched in this last 20 years, where is the richest place in America right now? It's around the CIA and the State Department and the Pentagon. That we've watched all that money that is supposed to go to war just make a ton of millionaires out of, you know, war and weapons. So I think that gives you a little bit of a capsule where we can have a conversation. Does that seem right?
Thank you, Jodie. We can start with questions now. Does somebody want to start?
Wow.
We're
Jodie.
going to raise our hands, right? Did you want to start, Tarek? Thank you.
Jodie, that was absolutely terrific. We need you. We need that kind of talk every week, at least. I just wanted to thank you for that. And what you said is like food for us. It's like food for the soul. What's happening? What happened to my? Oh.
I'm fixing it. I don't know. Zoom has changed a lot of things and it just screwed something up. Just keep talking.
Okay.
I'll fix it.
Somebody put a whiteboard
But anyway, what I do have a question. In lieu of everything that's happening in Gaza and the seemingly impossibility of stopping the U.S. administration from doing what they're doing and the hypocrisy that we are seeing coming out of Washington, what's the program? I mean, what is there that we could do that would be most effective right now? You know.
So, you know, one of the things that I always say at CODEPINK, and I think actually to help activists know what they're doing, is that you didn't start the war, you're not going to stop it. And I learned that with the Iraq War. It's like the plan was in place and they could give a shit. We were like white noise, you know, like, and I've definitely learned that when they have a plan, and they have lots of plans, and there's a very serious plan, this war on China and the war on Ukraine and the war in Palestine are part of the war in China. Let's just know that. So these are psychopaths, and this is a system, and the system is psychopathic. And that's why I work to get people off the war economy, because we don't even realize how dehumanized we are, because it dehumanizes us so it can use us. And, you know, why does propaganda work? Because it latches into our lack of grounding, our lack of rooting. It lets us believe something on these values that it's not really true. And then it hooks our hearts and minds and uses them. And in a way, we're all being used by the war economy. When you're in another culture, you can see it very vividly. And when people come to our culture, they can see it very vividly. And certainly when they're looking at us right now, they see it. But so you have to start with, what are we doing? Who are we as peace activists? Because we didn't start the war. We are not a part of the system. And I'm so, you know, this is being recorded. I hope it doesn't go very far, because I want to be able to be super intimate with you, but, you know, and I guess I'm not going to use names just in case, but I have many, you know, I have a few friends in Congress. They are depressed. And one 2 weeks ago said to me, I came here to make a difference and I can't. So if that's a member of Congress and we're trying to shift Congress to stop funding war, you know, sometimes when I feel like we're trying to do the thing we can't do, we need to do the thing we can do. And that is to build a movement against the war economy, against the imperialism, against weapons that starts at the root of the problem. Because how they use us is the we're unrooted. And so it's why you all are so valuable. It's why community matters. It's why local peace economy matters. It's like we spend what I saw, you know, CODEPINK is like we're spending a lot of time and energy in their game. I call us parsley on their plate. Their game is war, and anti-war activists are part of the plate, right? And we're playing the role of anti-war activists. And I'm like, but if we're just playing that role and it's not stopping anything, we have to be building the future. And if we're not building the future, we're just in this game. And I've been in this game. And if anybody thinks that, you know, anti-war activism stopped the Vietnam War, it didn't. The Vietnamese stopped the Vietnam War. So, I mean, it's like we get stuck in these stories. You know, North Vietnam really stopped the Vietnamese War. And, you know, we've had some successes at CODEPINK, and I always notice that when we have those successes, we've got the Pentagon on our side, you know, so I don't let us get delusioned by them. This system is huge. It is run by people who they are psychopaths. This new guy, Campbell, that they just put in #2 in state, man, he is crazy on steroids. We thought, Gina Haspel was bad. This man is horrible, 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 horrible. So what we do in our activism is throw the pebbles, we slow it down, we make those murdering have to witness their own murder, we let them not get away with murder, and we debunk the propaganda enough. I mean, when I flew to DC around the Iraq War, I said, I'm just standing here for a person watching whose mind is being used, but still has a heart to go, oh, this is wrong. Yeah, there's somebody else that's speaking for me, that I can see I can stay with it's wrong instead of being sucked into the vortex of evil and being used by it. So if we need to be loud, we need to be present, we need to disrupt power, we need to expose the lies, we need to stand together, we need to, we need to be peace. We need to remind people that they need peace. We need to wake people up. So the audience, always for activism, is the people closest to us to build to more engagement. Because if we don't do that, I can tell you, we've been in the halls of Congress for 21 years. And it's the worst. I mean, these people are crazy on freaking steroids, you guys. These people are nuts on crack. I mean, they are not human. So yes, we are going to disrupt them. They feel uncomfortable. They want to fucking punch us out. Reminder, nonviolent peace activism is about exposing the violence so other people can see the violence and change, because you need everyone else. We don't live in a democracy. I've said this for 50 years. This isn't a democracy. And now it's really not a democracy. I ran a presidential campaign to get money out of politics, because if you didn't get money out of politics, we don't live in a democracy. You can't live in a democracy with this much inequality, where money buys a vote, and where you don't have journalists, where there's no media, that it's all owned by the rich people. This is about rich people. We live in a monarchy. So it's time. What Palestinians are doing, here we have the last of the settler colonialists. When we were ending settler colonialism, we created this settler colonialist state that the United States put in place in Britain with lies and propaganda, and because they needed in, you know, an Asia spot. They needed to have their root there, so that's what they needed. I want to remind everyone that it was Israel that took us to war on Iraq. And let me tell you, every single Jewish member of Congress that was there then has told me that. I didn't make it up. They said we were told by Israel that this had to happen because they were Democrats and they voted wrong. And who led us to the war in Israel on Iraq were Jewish members of Congress that should have voted the other way. And Biden, by the way, who had me arrested the day he was the chair of the Foreign Policy Committee of the Senate, when he said we have to bomb Iraq into peace. And I said, you're crazy. He had me arrested, but he was working for AIPAC. So I also want to remind everyone that Egypt had a revolution and the Brotherhood took over. And when Israel saw they were going to open the Rafah border, they took over that revolution and they put Sisi in. So, you know, we're dealing with some really, really horrible people, and exposing that evil, debunking the propaganda, being able to find your talking points that pull people off of it is our work. Because right now we don't have enough people. Even though it feels like there's a lot of people, there are not a lot of people. Everybody should watch the Zone of Interest. We are living in the banality of evil. We are living in the banality of evil, and it is banal. I mean, it is frightening to walk down the streets, to listen to what people say in the middle of a genocide. You know, and I love that you brought up Aaron Bushnell earlier, you know, may he rest in peace and power. His last words were, "What did you ever wonder what you would do in slavery, or what you would do during the indigenous genocide in the Americas, or what you would have done during the Holocaust? You are doing that right now." And right now, most everyone is silent, playing it safe. I mean, members of Congress, they tell me they are frightened of AIPAC. We have Congress members. So what do? We go to Congress because Bush is frightening the American people with color-coded alerts. AIPAC has terrorized Congress. So, and they all work for Israel. They don't work for the American people. The Israel talking points today, they called, I just also want to say the people that are joining us in Congress, they're like, Medea and I feel like we're meeting ourselves from 22 years ago. They are quitting their life. They are showing up every day. They are becoming articulate and beautiful and forceful. And so one of them today, she confronted a member and he called her a terrorist.
Jodie, I have to tell you, I agree with every single word you said, and I think everybody here, I hope everyone here appreciates what you've said and how you've expressed the truth so beautifully. It's important to hear this, and it's important, you know, some people could say, well, you're preaching to the choir. That's important. That's how the choir gets strong. And at what you just said, something about we have to influence those that are close to us, you know, and that's how it works. So I just want to totally appreciate you, and everything that you said is right on. Thank you. I really mean that. Food for the soul.
Thank you. Well, I want to say many people have taught me that, so I'm just passing it forward as is all our responsibility. You know, when you know something, you share something. So, and Cesar Chavez was my teacher.
You pass it on very well.
Yes.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions?
Thank you. Right. So bear with me, and then I'll call on folks that have their hands raised. But Jodie, one of the things that I think about as you're speaking is, so what is to be done? And some of it's in our community. Some of it is holding rallies. Some of it is walking around, maybe to the State Department and saying to the guards, this is what you are guarding. This is what you supported in the military. There's so many things that are going on. And what I see that I'm sure is visible to everybody is we have a huge portion of people in this country that keep on doing their regular lives. So how do we get there? We have our speeches, we talk to each other.
I think it's really important You know, and this I've seen for my 50 some odd years of activism. And it's part of living in an empire. My son's a Buddhist priest. So he just said the other day, Mom, I have like everyone is in like a horrible shape. And I said, a little bit of that is because we live in an empire. We forget that empires make you stupid. And so we forget our own stupidity. And one of the stupidity things that we have going is we have the arrogance of empire embedded in our sinewy tissue, thinking that if we just got together, a little group of us, we could stop that horrible power from doing what it's doing. And it's part of what it wants us to think, so that we kind of don't pull together the force necessary to actually force it to be different, right? Because then we never think of building, we go off into our finger wagging, this is right, you know, you're wrong, this is right, instead of like knowing that it really is whoever's got the biggest force wins. It's still like about actually having values. And I have to say, the values of the people in the United States have been occupied. They are lost. It is banal, and it is on purpose. And that is what late stage capitalism does. And that is what you get when you suck at the tit of the war economy. So I want to do a little picture that we do in the local peace economy work. So okay, I'm going to just use my face because I can't do a circle. But so you have a circle, right? Think of a circle. That in a healthy person is called your sphere of concern. Now, your sphere of concern can be the world. It can be peace. It can be nuclear weapons. It can be, you know, care. Like your field of concern is bigger than you. It's bigger than your family. It's bigger than your community. Your field of concern can be very big. But your field of influence is the size of my eye. So I want you to look at that relationship. That is called healthy. So billionaires, the size of my face is their sphere of influence, and my nostril is the sphere of their concern. So think about that. They have a lot of influence and no concern, which is inhumane. They're not human. They're sick. A psychopath has all influence and no concern. A psychopath like Netanyahu, what he gets is by getting away with murder without for free. There is nothing in the way. There is no accountability. There is no concern. So I say that because when you go, what should I do? Like, what is to do, right? How you started the question. It's to center yourself in healthy. Here's my concern. Here's my circle of influence. What do I do with my circle of influence? And what do I have to offer? It's all good. You know what? It's all good. It's what are you good at? What can you, and like San Francisco, our San Francisco crew, I do this with them all the time because it's like young, old, seasoned, whatever. And I'm like, everybody's got a lead and you got to pass it because you also have to pass the baton. People need to get better. You can't exhaust yourself. So what you decide to do and others follow is about you. What can you lead on well? Where does your creativity express itself most beautifully? And new shit is the best thing to have happen, right? So, you know, where can you inspire? Where can you be audacious? And not, the one thing is it's gotta be disarming. It's gotta be where you have an audience that you're reaching. And it has to have a next step. Like, it can't just be a one-off. Like, you need to be thinking, and somebody's going to take the baton and do the next thing. But when we think that these one-off things are going to make it, we get stuck. We don't have patience as activists, I'm sorry to say. But it's like, if they start to build, you know, and it's like, that's what Code Pink was. It's like, we're going to show up every day. That's what Camp Casey was. I'm like, Cindy Sheehan, sit down in that fucking field. I'm on my way. We are not moving, you know, and then it grows power. So if you look at the experiences of where power grows, if you look at the camp outside of Blinken's house, or at the camp now that we've got outside of the Israel embassy, it builds power. So maybe you find, you know, maybe you start a vigil somewhere in New York City that everybody's just showing up for, where you teach. Maybe it's we used to do it at the recruitment center. That's where our Make Out No War came from, because we would be outside and we'd say, don't enlist, stay and kiss. That way we all make out. And so humor, I want to remind us, super important. And showing up for the listening, because the other thing that you asked is like, how do you get them to do something? It's more like, how do I do something beautiful that debunks the truth, that exposes power? I promise you, you won't be worried about other people. I'll be showing up out of the woodwork because you are telling the truth. Think of yourself as a tuning fork for peace. And the more you can be attuned, the more you can be healthy, the more you can be living it. People are looking for it. At Code Pink, our problem right now is capacity. We have so many people coming that want to like have chapters. We have like Fargo that, you know, is taking on its city council. It's like, once you start to be that tuning fork where people go, yes, there's truth. Yes, there's health. Yes, there's life. My mind, my soul, my heart has been starving for this. What can I do with you? But we try to instead sell somebody, but instead let's just, if we are it and we show up in public in a beautiful, disarming, attractive, you know, like it's like make peace, you know, sexy again is our thing. It's like, it's making peace sexy again. People are showing up. So it's not like, how do we get over there? It's how do I feed the choir, and how do I help the choir grow? And so you've got to keep nurturing the choir, and you've got to get the choir to grow, but the choir grows because you go places and you share, you know, and people go, wow, I want to be with you. You're telling the truth. I'm starved for this. This is life. These are my values. And that's what's missing in the world right now is value, like actual real values and truth.
Thank you. And I'll call on Rachel, who has also been doing this for many years and leading the light and coordinating relationships between peace activists here and peace activists in Japan. Rachel.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Susan. Hi. Yeah, the Code Pink's activism is amazing. When I visit Japan, every time Code Pink Osaka has been the driving force, and they've been organizing amazing events for us, which is wonderful. So through your talk, you mentioned the word settlers colonialism, and that's exactly what's going on in Gaza. But when you think back the history of this country, United States is exactly the produce of settlers colonialism. So for this country to say, Israel, go back, step back, and leave the Gaza alone, that means what we do. Are we supposed to return the land and the resources that this country snatched from the indigenous people? I think it's a time to reflect the history of this country. I came from Japan, but I went to the college and studied, U.S. history in this country, which was very interesting because basically the United States is a bit different from the European culture. I think this country is characterized by positiveness, futuristic, and that's a good one. But if you flip the card, the other side shows never look back, never think back to history, and never apologize, right? And I think it's about a time to turn around this course, and new generation need to redesign which way this country should go, right? And through your experience, through your activism, what can we do?
Rachel, I think, one of the things you're saying is, here's another thing I always teach is like, we've been taught that there was an American Revolution, but that's a lie, because a revolution is about class. We never had a class war in the United States. The United States is built from capitalism. Capitalism is what the United States was built on. Europe and every other country, they don't come out of that. They have a very different route of throwing away feudalism into creating something else. So they're steeped in some different lessons, and class is much more part of the DNA of their cultures. So we never had a revolution. We just had rich people giving it to rich people and deciding that, and creating a brotherhood. Definitely teaching good history is important, and, pulling us out of history. But I want to tell you a beautiful story. Part of the work of the local peace economy is to give back the land. Well, first of all, owning land is the first crime of capitalism and the war economy. So the privatization of land itself is our first crime. And so one of the things that I've done with the local peace economy is I've gone to a lot of people that own land that are wealthy and try to convince them to give it back to the community. That, if we're gonna, because the commons are gone, we don't even know what commons are anymore, like these generations. And so to be able to give the community back land so we can recommon our communities and remember what it is to be in communal relationship and not have everything be a commodity. So one of the women that's been through my program, and one of my girlfriends who's been part of CODEPINK for 25 years, she together this week, she just gave $25 million, and the shell mound in Berkeley has now been given back to the Ohlone people.
That's wonderful.
And I have many more examples of that. Another example is they've given 4,000 acres back to the I can't remember the tribe in Alabama, and Marcus is creating, not only creating like the local peace economy model, because for me it's like, and I put in here the local peace economy link. You can download my book for free, or you can buy it, but it's also free there. But it literally is the local peace economy culture fully formed. And when you're inside of it, they make you give up your culture and become their culture, which is a profound experience that we don't even know how bad our culture is. We have no clue because it's the water we swim in, but it's bad. And so, I've been moving a lot of money into, I can tell you a lot more. Like I got a woman who had a land in Louisiana, and it's now been given to all the Black families that were enslaved and farmed on it. And so, there's a lot, I think I have 1,000 stories in my local peace economy work now of like who's doing what, that we can, because if you can know that it's true and that it's happening, it's easier to jump off this dead war economy into creating a future that is healthy. Because it's like, if we can create a healthy future, all this bad shit will die away. Hate doesn't create anything. Enemies don't create anything. And so, all this freaking, empire has left is weapons, which is, we should be very concerned about, because when we're watching what they're doing with it and what could be next, it's horrible. But we need to be building the other thing that kind of undermines them and takes their, foundation out from under them, because this other thing is where people want to be. And I can tell you that's where people want to be, but we need to build it. We can't be, I give half my time to the peace economy and half my time to disrupting power, because yes, we need to keep disrupting power, but we also need to be building the future, the new way. As you said, we need to be building a new way out of this violent thing that is the United States of America, that, tries to distract everybody by telling lies and stories. And those stories have been exposed. As I said, the curtains are open and the emperor has no clothes, and it's ugly, man, ugly on steroids. Oof.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, sorry about that. I just wanted to, I was interested in what Jodie was talking about regarding the war economy, and I had a thought related to something that Julian Assange had said. He at some point he described, I think it was in an interview with John Pilger, he described the enormous quantity and diversity of the military intelligence apparatus in the United States, and he said that he thought, well, that he saw it as a vast sprawling estate of what we would traditionally call the military intelligence complex or the military industrial complex. And he said that he had seen it grow, basically the number of private companies that have sprung up around after Iraq, that are now supporting the National Security Agency and different military and intelligence initiatives has increased 100 times in 10 years. And so I wanted to just, I don't know, I guess ask like how maybe we could spread the word that, because I get the sense just from talking to people in my area in Albany that there's a lot of people who are really like, paying their mortgage and buying their barbecue grill and stuff off of like this type of industry at this point. It's like filtered down onto the local micro level where you have people literally starting small companies and getting grants from the DoD or different agencies to just lease cars out or something and participate on all these different levels. Like it's starting to get kind of horrifying to me to see how like worked its way into normal society. This is like this kind of disease or cancer or like giant evil, squid or something that is like got its tentacles in everything. And so I guess like I wonder, trying to communicate this to people that like this is, like we need to sort of somehow move away from this as much as we can so that we're not like just depending on these industries. Like I'm all for entrepreneurial business, people starting their own small businesses and stuff, but people are starting small businesses that support this, and so I guess that's my comment. Thanks.
So yeah, when we started CODEPINK, what we saw was that they had moved the making of weapons into every district. So every member of Congress would vote for it because it was jobs in their community. And then we saw with Ed Snowden, which is what, now a decade ago, that, the surveillance state is, I mean, you can't even talk about China. It's just like crazy. And the Americans think that they're not fully surveilled. And so you're describing like it went from Congress having the tentacles, now the tentacles of the war machine are across, you're right, it's across. And the military budget is 1.5 trillion. They also lie about that. I don't have the link. I don't think I have the link right now, but I could send it to y'all later. But a bunch of folks just did a study, and it's with government numbers, only government numbers. It's 1.5 trillion. Well, think about that, a level of money, and what they are definitely figuring out how to have as many people. And by the way, when you get hired for the CIA, they only hire psychopaths. So you go to psychological tests, they only hire psychopaths. So you laugh, but that's what we've got out there with all this control and having like, they're not people that care about anything. And being in the war economy, you become a psychopath because you become dehumanized, which is really what a psychopath is. So the dehumanization of people. And also I just want to say, I've really learned from seeing all of this to have compassion for everyone. No one signed up for this. Nobody. And it's no different than my friend is on the border of the Rafah border every day, and every morning I talk to him and he shows me videos of Israeli young people, like teenagers, blocking all this aid that he's bringing in. And they are hateful. And I'm like, a parent raised their child to be hateful? I mean, what in the world? What in the world? What has become of us? this psychopathy is going very deep. So I would say even to the question of what do we do? And Caitlin Johnstone said this so well a couple of days ago. I hope everybody, reads her. She's my soul nourishment. But her thing the other day was, it is our job to take care of each other. It's our job because so much lies, so much manipulation is happening right now that community is so important. So it's like when you say, speaking to the choir, we have to keep speaking to each other because we're going to be picked off. And, we're watching people be picked off. So we've got to have compassion for everyone. It is on purpose that they are made stupid. It is a concerted effort. And they were forced to do this by this structure that we live inside of. So yes, our commitment is to undermine this structure, but it is taking everyone with it. And so, yes, it's a monster. It's a octopus, but I love octopuses. I mean, it's just this.
Yeah, I didn't want to insult octopuses or squids.
I didn't want to say octopus. It's like, it's a monster with many arms that are just has claws, and it is taking everything and eating it. It's like, and it's been doing that since the beginning, but we now can see, many people have seen it. I mean, Martin Luther King says, the greatest terrorist organization on the planet, that's like 50 years ago. It's like people have been saying this for a long time. And it was the hope to be something else, but it kept shoving the dark side under, having it be a secret.
Thank you. Dan Shea.
Yes, thank you, Jodie. I agree that, the psychopaths are in charge, not only in the military and in government, but in CEOs and corporations in this country. I felt that for a long time. I do see hope. I see a lot of positivity in young people in the streets. I'm seeing it just About Face locally just finally started getting their act together here, and I helped them set up a meeting today. Actually, they're going to have a meeting locally. Aaron Bushnell's emulation really brought a lot of veterans back onto the movement, and they see, I think as veterans speak out, as Jews speak out, they make it as the movement grows. It lets other people know that they're not alone and they have an opportunity to speak out, and they don't have to be afraid. I see that people are afraid, though. Sometimes they just can't. They're afraid of being attacked. In the military, towards the end of my service there, or my deployment, I should say, I said "fuck you" to the military, and I didn't give a shit if I went to the brig. I did go to the brig, and I just had enough of the military, and I saw it as nothing but a fascist organization, and I had to get out. Now I go into the high schools and talk to high school kids, and when I'm in the schools, I'm so surprised by how intelligent these young people are. They're organizing. Just recently, they organized a ceasefire. A number of 3 high schools come together to go before the Portland Public School Board for a ceasefire movement. And this is people that are organizing themselves. We're not organizing. They're organizing themselves because they can see what's happening. The atrocities that are happening is being televised through social media, through even some of the mainstream media can't hide it anymore. And so when I see this happening, these young people coming out and doing this is just amazing. I'm also a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. So locally, I was, when they first started it here in Portland, it must have been 20, 30 people. We grew with Gaza, the atrocities happening, up to 400 or 500 people almost immediately. And it's continuing to grow, and we continue to have more young people that joined Jewish Voice for Peace, and they are leading the movement. They are leading the movement here, and all I can do as a veteran is when I'm asked to speak, I join them and be a part of that and help organize. But I'm seeing them building the movement that you were talking about, building that anti-war, that peace movement. And I'm hoping that you see the positive things about that also at the same time, because I don't want it all to be negative and people think there's no way we can win this. And I believe we can win. I have to believe it.
I'm sorry if you got that from me, because I'm saying build, 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 because we can win, but we need, we can create another way. We just need to do it. And engagement, showing up, being the tuning fork, it's all good. And young people are so smart. They are smart. They see through it better than anybody. So I'm kind of like, hurry up and take over.
And CODEPINK is really good here too. They're doing a great job. So I appreciate everybody that's doing this. Thank you so much.
And don't forget, I've got the People's Forum that I hope you all use when you need a place in the city. So.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Are there other questions or statements? Nobody. Jodie, it's really been a pleasure to have you here and listen to you. I think the point that I wanted to make earlier is that whatever people do and understand is really, really important. And I can't say that strongly enough. One is we need to take action, and we need to understand that one person can make a change. The other is we really need to care about each other. What happens today is that we get angry, we strike out, but we really need to understand that we need to work together and we need to care about people, and we need to develop that culture of caring and of working together.
It's hard when our hearts are broken and we're furious at, it's like figuring out how to take a breath and turn that into beauty instead of, letting them own you by forcing you to behave in a way that they want you to behave. And I think as peace activists, that's always our work, especially those of us who are older, of like, how do you take the blow? Somebody said, like they're afraid of, getting hurt, but it's kind of like a lot of it's just words. So how do you take the blow? Let it, find its way through your system and come back with what it is that we're building together. So we are building a future. And that, by being the tuning fork, by having the patience, by being engaged, by not being silent, by being the tuning fork for peace, we will create the future. And we will, together, because there's so many new green sprouts. We've been through a drought. Many of us know that, of like some really dark times we've had where no one would listen. And it was, especially those Obama years, woof. So right now, it's, we're on that precipice. And everything we give is pushing it in the direction of peace. And that's what you just want to encourage people to do. It's like, let's not worry about the specific. Let's just worry about that you're out there. And if you can't think of what to do, find out somebody's doing it and just be there with them, support them, learn something new, find the young people. Monday nights at the People's Forum, we have volunteer night, and we've had 300 people almost every Monday night coming and creating the events that are going to happen the next week. And so, it's just keep out there. Sometimes I'm organizing, sometimes I'm showing up, but I'm every day engaged.
What if you had people actually put together a forum for people who are angry, like for people who are hurt? I mean, if someone's angry and they're fighting, they're expressing pain because they've been hurt. And it's not really fair to those people who are participating and they're getting attacked or they're hurt or whatever to just tell them to shut up and love everybody. You should maybe have some type of a forum to actually engage with what people like to actually hear their pain and like try to work through like their issues. Because I mean, I think that some people do feel like that they get very brokenhearted or hurt by like what happens when they're trying to be activists, and it can be very stressful. They don't have
that's
much
what
of
we
a
have.
forum to like actually voice that.
That's what Monday nights are about at the People's Forum, because that it starts from the place of the working out the anger and finding who needs care. And at Code Pink, we have every Monday night at 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock, every Monday night. It's just anybody from the community that needs to come and get loved and vent and scream and express their anger and hurt and their struggles. It's our Monday night. Yes, you have to have that. Medea and I have each other, it's like we've kind of held each other together over the 20 some years of like screaming, crying, going into depression. But we know, or what we've learned for ourselves, is that when we're there, the only antidote is action. That going into action is where the love is. Where right now my heart is broken every day. I wake up every morning crying. I live in nightmares. But when I am in the street with these beautiful people, whatever city I'm in, wherever I am, the profound love, the profound commitment to life, the profound commitment to humanity, that nourishes my heart and soul. It's like, what do we focus on? I focus on that.
Thank you. And it is in the working together and, as you said, in the companionship and in the concern for each other and the love for each other. And it's constantly building that community and bringing people together and understanding that. Thank you.
And singing together is very important.
Yes. And we have a leader here of singers. We're very lucky.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me. I love you all. I'm so grateful for everything each one of you does. Super grateful. I've been in the streets with many of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's now, right now is where our shoulder against the wheel matters so much. So let's just keep pushing. Let's tip it over. Bye. And China's not our enemy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jodie.
Thank you. Bye.